Left church on a Wednesday night and it was snowing. What a surprise. I didn't know it was going to happen. And I'm still one of those weirdos that loves snow as long as it melts by the next day. And I was really enjoying the snow. And so when I got home, I lit the fireplace. Now we have gas logs. And I want you to know that for a long time I thought, the worst thing you can have is gas logs. But it was snowing. I didn't have to go out, pull back the tarp, get a couple of logs, throw them on the fireplace. Instead of 2 logs, I went 2 clicks. It was really kind of nice. I said, you know, my perspective is changing. I'm getting where I kind of like these gas logs. And I've been thinking about the end times more than ever. You find that happening in your life? I have friends I have one that I visit quite often, and it's an aunt, and she says to me every time, Harold, do you think these are the last days? Yes, every day is getting close to the last days. That's what I think. Well, the Apostle Paul was getting close to his last days. He's in prison. He's been in a Roman prison twice now. The first time he was house arrest. And that wasn't too bad. People could come and see him and he could talk to them. But this last time they threw him in a dungeon, down in a hole. They changed people to him so they wouldn't get away. And he knew that now the execution date was getting close. And I thought to myself at first, why would God ever allow the Apostle Paul, who did so much, go to prison? Well, I can tell you why. It's called the New Testament. And the only way to get Paul to slow down and write was to throw him in a dungeon. But while he was in there writing, he began to write some things. And I want you to see what he wrote toward the very end of his life. I think it's on the screen. I don't know what translation I use, but he says, my life is being given as an offering to God, and the time has come for me to leave this life. I have fought the good fight. I finished the race. I've kept the faith. Now a crown is being held for me, a crown of righteousness. I can tell you what a wonderful thing I love about this verse. The Lord, the judge, will judge rightly and give a crown to me on that day, not only to me, but to all who have waited and loved for him to come again. I want to talk to you just a little bit, okay? It is a little bit from my heart, too. I've called it finishing strong. The Apostle Paul finished strong. He had things going on in his life I can't even begin to imagine, but he finished strong. And I read that passage of Scripture and I said, Lord, would you help me to finish strong? And so I began to look at the Scripture and I said, I think I have an idea how I can go about doing that. And so let me give them to you. The first thing that came to my mind, if I'm going to finish strong, I have to be faithful to my calling. This is what Paul said. My life is being given as an offering to God. Everything that happened in his life was part of God's will, and he was just doing it willfully and joyfully for God. So it was kind of thing that he was giving back to God. I'm one of those that's a little bit like your brother that received a calling very early in life. The truth is, I was 11, almost 12, but I was 11 years old. I remember it. It is the clearest thing that's ever happened in my life, which is good, because there was a lot of times I would have loved to wonder, is really God calling me to this? No, there was no question to it. I knew on that night God called me, and he called me to preach good news. That's exactly how I felt that he was saying to me. I want you to preach the gospel, preach good news. And so all my life, that's what I've tried to do, just to follow that calling. Now, as a kid, I didn't understand it. I didn't know what it meant. Did it mean evangelist? Did it mean a pastor? Did it mean a street corner? I wasn't really sure what the calling was. And then as a teenager, I found myself trying to negotiate God what I thought. You know, how can I make this calling fit into an airplane? That's what I was trying to think, how to get this thing all worked out. But it was one thing that was very clear. God had called me to preach good news. And the clarity of that calling has given me strength over and over. Now, there's one problem I had. I had a tendency to compare my calling. Has that ever happened to anyone? In fact, just today, I had the same problem I have a lot of times. When those people start singing, I just kind of think it's me. Yeah. When Lori floats up to those notes, I just think, that's me. Eh, Yeah. Yeah, I really do. When Craig Carter hits those bass notes, I act like that's me. Yeah. In fact, while the quartet was singing, or the trio was singing, I found myself putting in the fourth part. I tell you, I was singing the bass really good. But you know, a long time ago, my mother was the one that told me I could sing, and I believed her. Everybody else since then have told me I can't. I'm beginning to understand that they were correct. But boy, do I have fun trying. But here it is. I don't have to sing those bass notes, and I don't have to sing like the quartet sing. Because you know why? That's not my calling. God called me to preach good news. That's it. Mary started out on that song. Oh my goodness, my grace sufficient. I thought for a second the Lord had touched me and my knee was healed. So I started to get up to run the aisles and it wasn't healed. But I thought to myself, I used to tell people that Mary is one of my best students. I taught her. There's not too many people who believe that, but Mary, I sometimes wish I could play the piano like you play the piano. Yeah. But I don't have to. You see, my calling is not to play the piano. My calling is to preach good news. Even when I hear these great preachers, these orators, I mean, these guys that are so silver-tongued, they can just talk and they can just move the emotion somehow in their conversation. I say to myself, I wish I could preach like that. And I get this feeling, no, that's not my calling. My calling is just to preach good news. You know what? God has a calling for you too. And it may be school teacher. It might be just 100 things, maybe more than that. You don't have to be anybody and do anything that God hasn't called you to do. Don't feel bad. Only thing we have to do, if we're going to finish strong, don't think about some great finale. No. All I think about is making sure I'm faithful to my calling and I preach good news. I'll be strong on that. I think I'm going to finish strong because I fight my battles. I really do. Paul said, I fought a good fight. And the truth is, we all have battles. We have personal battles. We have spiritual battles. We have life battles. They're just going on all the time. And these battles can be so difficult, and sometimes they never leave my mind. See, the biggest battlefield that I have is my mind. I don't know about you, but every battle I have, it starts in the mind. Every temptation that comes to me starts in the mind, and I have to learn that I have to make sure that I fight that battle in my mind. Get it done. Get it over. Win that thing. A lot of other battles. In fact, the strangest things happen lately. I guess it only happens when you get up in age a little bit, but I've been thinking back of a few battles that I had when I was younger. I don't even know where the thought come from. I'm sure not sitting down thinking about, well, let me think about some of the battles I had. No. Even before I started writing the sermon, I had a couple of times when old battles came to me. And this happened just like 2 weeks ago. This battle was going on, and I was fighting that battle, and I remember saying, Lord, that was 40 years ago. Why am I having this battle in my mind today? Help deliver me from this battle. I just say that to say it seems like the enemy never wants to give up. He wants to go after your mind any and every opportunity that he has. Well, I tell you, I did learn to fight my battles carefully. When I was a young pastor, that was a long time ago. When I was a young pastor, I realize now that I fought a lot of battles I didn't have to fight. Yeah, I thought I had to protect God and protect the church and all that stuff, and I took my stand, and I fought the battle, and I look back on it now, and I go, that's a stupid battle. That's one of them I didn't have to battle. Now I fight my battles carefully. I really are about that. But I know that I'm going to finish strong because I'm going to fight and win every battle the enemy throws to me. Halftime. I only got 4 points, so 2 of them are gone. Now that I'm back from refreshments, My third point is finish the course. I got a race to run. The race isn't done. In fact, the Bible tells me I can make all the plans I want to, but God will order my steps. I got a race to run, and it's the one that He's laid out before me. I looked at a couple of things on YouTube. I kind of like that now. And one of them was, I think back just last year, 2020, the last Olympic. And there was the mixed 4x4 hundreds, was it, I guess? Anyway, it was a relay race. And the Americans. Now, of course, if it was the Russians, I wouldn't tell this story. But since it's American, I'll tell you this story. I'm telling you, we took off. In fact, we were so far ahead, the last leg, the American was waiting and turning around like, come on. And he's waiting for this. And he finally grabs the baton, turns around, and he just barely stepped on the line and took off running. But he was so fast, when he got done running that race, he was so far ahead, there wasn't anybody even close to him. So we thought, wow, there's a gold medal. We did good on that one. We did really good. And then they got their heads together and said, no, America, USA, has been disqualified. He stepped out of the lane. And I thought to myself, wow, God, I know you've got a race for me to run, and I want to run that race well. Help me to stay in my lane. Don't let me get off into something else. I want to run the race. I want to run the race well, but I want to make sure I run my race in my lane. There's another one. You know this guy. You've heard his story. And I had to pick up my paper because I'll never get his name right. It was in the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Anybody know who I'm talking about? John Stevens Awari? No. Whatever she said. Let me tell you a story and you'll remember it. His story was the one that when they took off on that marathon run, he was doing what he always did. But early on in the race, somehow he tripped up, dislocated his knee, and also fell and injured his shoulder. He got up, and I don't know how he got it or where he got it, but he got some piece of rag and tie it around his knee to keep his kneecap where it needed to be, and he tried to make his way running toward the finish line. Wasn't doing much running. In fact, he had to do a lot more walking than he had to do anything else. Well, the other runners, they were just running away, and the first place guy came in, second place, third place. In fact, everybody came in but him, but he kept running. And they finally gathered them all up, had the stands, did the ceremony, and an hour and 5 minutes after the first place guy had finished, John Stevens, I can say that part pretty good, John Stevens crossed over the finish line. There was only one reporter there with him, asking him questions. Why didn't you just quit? Why are you still running? The race has been over a long time. And this is what he said. Now, this is what you'll remember. He said, my country, Tanzania, didn't send me 5,000 miles to start a race. They sent me 5,000 miles to finish the race. I think that's a good thought in itself. But when I read the story more, there was another thought that I read that I go, I like that even better. Because the guy said, well, why didn't you just quit? This whole thing was over an hour ago. And this is what he said, I quote, I never thought of quitting. Never. Never in my mind. I want you to know, sometimes my race gets weary. And sometimes I got a little tired. But I want you to know, the thought of quitting never enters my mind. I'm just going to keep on because I'm going to finish strong. Would have been easy for him to quit, too. You know, there's 18 of the runners that couldn't handle the altitude, the thin air up there in Mexico City and quit. But no, not him. He said, I never thought of it. I finished the race. There's one more point that I want to share with you today. And it's only for those that's really wanting to finish strong. Keep the faith. Keep the faith. You say, Pastor, that didn't start with an F. I told you it took me twice as long and it's only half as good. Can't expect all that. It's a decision. I want you to know nothing can take the place of my faith. And what I did recently was studied up on every apostle and how they died. And I thought to myself, boy, I want to tell you, they had seen the risen Lord with their own eyes, and nothing, absolutely nothing, could change their mind. Can you imagine the strength of their faith? I mean, what are you going to do with a group of guys like that? Listen, Paul. If you don't straighten up and deny your faith, we're going to stone you. That's happened before. That don't bother me. That's the way all the apostles were. Nothing would deter them. Their mind was made up. And I want you to know that even though it's been a number of years, it doesn't mean that it's just automatic and I'm on cruise. No, I still fight battles. I still have things to do, but I want you to know I'm going to keep the faith. I wish I had something that up my sleeve or would help you remember about this sermon, because there's one more phrase. I went back to the verse 6, I believe it is. And if you look on your outline, I noticed last night I made a mistake on that. Isn't that? It was just typo, it just happens. But it's chapter 4, not chapter 2. Chapter 4, verse 6, this is the Living Bible. I liked how it said, I say this because I won't be around to help you much longer. I thought the reason why I skipped that at the beginning, because I figured somebody's going to say, I know what he's doing. He's going to give a resignation. No, I'm not giving a resignation, okay? I'll be here a little longer, but Paul said I'm not going to be here much longer. My time has almost run out.